Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the one, to the only RaceFace.Pro, and welcome to round 2 of our LMU GT3 Championship this time, Season 4. And my name is Stephen Koenig. Joining me in the box is the one, the only, and has got luxurious hair, Cameron de Bastos. Cameron, welcome to LMU, and welcome back to the commentary box for LMU. This time we have Paul Ricard.
Yeah, good evening, Stephen. Good evening, everybody out there in the virtual grandstand. And yeah, back out in the French countryside, but on a different circuit, yet still has quite a long layout. Paul Ricard, a circuit that tests both drivers as well as machine with its very flat layout and strong sweeping curves.
It's going to be an interesting one. Paul Ricard also is one of these tracks that slipstreaming is absolutely necessary to go and really get the jump on the field. However, down the incredibly long back straight that we're about to see Myeth Musa heading onto, you can so easily outbrake yourself, run out wide, get those track limits, and land up costing yourself not only time in qualifying, but also incur a penalty during the race as well. So this is going to be an interesting one. It's going to be a very interesting time because this is a relatively new circuit to LMU.
Yeah, it's completely new. Most of the drivers out there who have run it before on the side of our ACC has driven this track before, and we all know it. I mean, this long straight in the ACC is just a very long one. That chicane that Myeth Musa just went through did not feature on that side of the simulator. However, it just shows the configurability of Paul Ricard. It has numerous amounts of configuration, allowing for not only GT3 racing, but also the likes of F1 motorbikes and a lot of our endurance sides for LMU or even just TT touring cars. So it's kind of interesting to see the different layouts of the circuit. If I'm looking here at my notes completely on the side now, it seems to have a total of 8 different configurations, all on one circuit, meaning many different types of layouts, entertaining a lot of various action around the circuit and for all drivers involved.
And it's going to be a very interesting time for drivers. We do have a new driver to the field that is racing in a Porsche that is, well, as I said, rather new, not only to the world of RaceFace, but out in the world of LMU racing here in the league. Carl Lake joining us. This is his first outing with us, and we're looking forward to seeing what he can do. But let's take a look at who's in the grid, because we've got Gerrit Bucas, who's out in the Lamborghini Huracan Evo 2, something you've actually sat in and know that it's all about a monster fight. Brandon Kruger returning in. He is with the RT18 and going to be chasing down. Esteban Pretorius returns, this time in a McLaren 720S. And a little bit further down, we've got the likes of Kirsten Peters, Paul Fenter running a little bit further in a BMW. No, nonetheless, because, well, he didn't quite enjoy the Aston Martins out in LMU. We've got Martin Jacobs out in the big AMG Mercedes GT3 Evo. Ron Kleinans a little bit further back is in the Lexus. Grant McClure out in the BMW. Neil Greening in Lamborghini. And then we've got Kobe Theron, who's a new driver in for the league. Wonderful to see a Porsche and a new driver out there. Gerard Van der Vest, VDV, going to be having a bit of fun. And then we've got Jan Gumraal, who is also new to this, new to us. Vietia Buerta, Lucas Joubert, Jody Cinnamon comes back. Good to see him returning. And Stanton Augustus as well. Arno Kraus, Chris Collison, Myeth Musa, Carl Lake as we spoke. Sean Straden rejoins the circuit as well. Jan Blicknote. We got Jan VDV, Tristan Herbst that was racing. We had Darren Miller, Rob van der Heever, Brandon Holthuizen, Herman Percival, along with Devon Nell that has been in from round 1. So it's good to see some new names. Tristan Herbst, a relatively older person in the world of RaceFace.Pro. Good to see that he's getting some legs in to get some racing out there. But at the moment, it's Bucas that leads out the top of the board with a 206.6. Kleinans coming in with a second place. Now, we know that it's going to be an interesting time. However, there is a couple of drivers that I don't see here one of them is, well, mainly driving the likes of the hypercars that has been a multiple champion. So interesting not to see our multiple champion in the hypercars racing with us this evening, but it's going to be an interesting fight nonetheless, because we can have some new faces to the grid and some new names taking the wins and after a critical time. So far in the standings, however, it is Karapukas who currently leads out on 37 points, with Johan Blickner in second, Martin Jacobs in third, looking to chase him down. So some good new names towards the sharp end of the field, but we know Paul Ricard can be a rather interesting circuit. Also, huge shout out to everyone out in the virtual grandstands. Wonderful to see you. We've got the likes of Toki. We've got a lot of support coming in for the VDVs from Ulrich. We have got the likes of Sums ZA, which is going and supporting the Stingers, and we've also got support for the RTA team. So good to see so many people coming out, enjoying and wanting to be part of the show.
Absolutely, Stephen. I mean, it's great to see some new names on circuit as well, some old names on the circuit. We did mention the likes of Kyle Lake. Kyle Lake, it is someone that I actually spoke with during the course of the week. Very, very new. Wanted to race last week, but unfortunately missed out on the race due to having to attend his sister's wedding. So he stepped away, came back, and decided to change cars. Luckily did not compete and go for the Porsche. He did enter with a McLaren, but decided to go for a Porsche. And spoke throughout, I believe yesterday I spoke with him during one of his practice sessions, where he says he's eager to race and to prove. He is very, very new to the likes of sim racing as well as LMU. Wanted to go the ACC side, but said, nah, let's go LMU. It looks like there's a lot more fun going on there. But a very good number of new names there. We mentioned them there, the likes of Thron, but also some old returning names who were all on the other side of the fence in terms of ACC and AI racing, but now gone on to the LMU side with the likes of, you mentioned Tristan Herbst and also Herman Percival, all joining in on our LMU Championship there. But it's really great to see some very old names and new names jumping in on the sim here. But Gerrit Beek is really a driver who is looking to make a name for himself and going around in the Huracan Evo 2, which is, I must say, Stephen, a beautiful car, really, really beautiful, and just sounds phenomenal. The sim doesn't do it justice. It just sounds an absolute monster whenever you get to put your ears to the sound of that V10, I believe it's a V10 horsepower or V10 engine that this car is producing.
It is a V10 with an Audi gearbox, but currently top of the board is a Johan Blicknote in a BMW. Now, interesting to see the BMWs coming out in force this season. Now, we've seen in previous seasons with the hypercars, with the LMP3 cars, and with our GT3 cars racing at the same time, the BMWs were, well, hit or miss, and it's good to see that they're coming back with a bit of force. However, we do have a large pack of mid-engines that are having a go and looking to improve. So, with that being said, Blicknote at the top of the board with a 204.8. Martin Jacobs with a 205.1. Martin Jacobs last season was in a hypercar, but it was the Cadillac that was going and really fighting out as well. So good to see that he's back out there. Something a little bit different to the Cadillac, as we did see Brandon Kruger, who might have just missed his corner and is just allowing drivers to come through. So Brandon Kruger also hoping to improve with the RTA team. I know they have been working incredibly hard on the cars to ensure they have a lot towards the sharp end of the field to be one of the strongest of the sim racing teams. But talking about stronger sim racing teams that are out on the circuit, we cannot count out the likes of Project Vapor. Mahath Musa being one of those drivers, not only raced last night in the Project Vapor's LMU series, but also going and racing in both ACC and LMU in the BMW. So getting to grips with the car in multiple sims and understanding the car in its true fundamentals. He actually started racing ACC in the BMW M6, did R Factor 2 in the same, then moved over to the M4. So kept with the brand, but also is a team to keep a very, very close eye on. Another one is a team that's come out in full force this season, Logistical Nightmare Racing. Everyone thought they were dead. Everyone thought that they were away. Everyone thought they just disappeared into oblivion, but not to be the case. they've come out in full force and looking to be at the sharp end of the field, with even Paul Ricard saying he's quite surprised with the pace at the moment. Ricard always excited about climbing in behind the rig to see what he can do to get for a top 5. However, though, he's running a 206.0 so far from 7th position all the way down to 14th position. It's 206. Beyond that is 207 to 210. So there is a little bit of missing out between drivers that you can see the pace difference, but towards the sharp end in the field, all sitting within 204 and 205. Claire Bukes at the moment sits with a 204.7, Blich notes with a 204.8, Sean Straden with a 205.176, Martin Jacobs a 205.19, and Brandon Kruger with a 205.2. Lyons also fires back with a 205.5 on his last run.
Yeah, well, you mentioned there, Stephen, the likes of many of these old drivers still sticking with brands that know. Marth Musa, you list the whole, well, his all racing history with all the cars of the BMW brand that has been racing there. But it's good to see a trend that I'm noticing is many of the drivers are switching back to old faithfuls. Cars they have done in the past, they know quite well how to set it up, how to work around with the car's abilities, and how to extract the most performance out of that car. Then you do get some that are still playing around, figuring out what they want to do with it. But it's going to be quite interesting to see what the drivers are going to be doing here, with the likes of many of the drivers still struggling. Another thought that came to mind is I've spoken with one of the drivers also throughout this week, and they said Paul Ricard is such a tricky circuit because of its nature. It's flat with very small changes in elevation, not even enough, as you see in the shot here. It just dips a bit down. There's not enough elevation changes in order to get the car to make some changes in the setup. So it's pretty much all about how fast you can go on the straights, and it also means that you put a lot of load within those tires in order to take some of these corners flat out, or just carry a significant amount of speed through it. So it's quite difficult, and drivers really need to be careful. Otherwise, you do get a bit of a spin, and you might just repeat a Leclerc radio moment as he heads into the barriers. Unfortunately, ruins his race or even his qualifying.
Well, that chucks in for quite a bit. But let's talk about the only McLaren out on circuit. Esteban Pretorius switching out from the Lamborghini in previous seasons. That's worked well with him. Going into a McLaren, you're quite familiar with these cars in terms of their rotation and power out on the circuit. The question is this the right choice? At the moment, sitting in 10th position, the 206.1 has been his best qualifying lap time, as we do see the likes of Ricard moving up to 6th place. But with everyone going the reliable old cars, the Porsches, the BMWs, the single Mercedes that's out there, a single Chev as well, but McLaren, Chev, arbitrary cars to have in the race, considering your competition is majority stacked as BMWs and Lamborghinis. Wouldn't it be the idea to take something that the rest of the competition, or do you think maybe he's found something slightly different as we keep on board with him and seeing that he's improved in his first sector?
Well, it's a point that you raised quite well there, Stephen, but the thing is, with the likes of, you don't want to go all the cars, well, just want to go make it a one-make series, unfortunately. Well, not unfortunately, but don't make it a one-make series. You want to have a bit of different brands, manufacturers fighting it out there in order to really try and take it. I mean, everyone also has a very different driving style. Some drivers like to have the weight of the engine on the rear in order to get the car stabilized, able to brake a bit later. Some of them want to have it on the front, have that weight be the thing that pulls the car through the corners or just pushes it there. So it's kind of different. But the McLaren, you mentioned, is something that I know quite well. It's a car that has great straight line speed, great acceleration out of corners if you know how to use your foot and get that power delivered to the tires and onto the tarmac. But it's also great, phenomenal braking, meaning you can brake very late, with its best braking happening at the later stages of the braking cycle. But many drivers is going to take a bit of a risk. If you find a car that works for you, then well done. I'll take my hat off to you and see how you can take it on to those front engine cars in terms of the BMWs that are dominating the field. But I do believe that every driver has sat down, tested all the cars they have, and figured out which one will work the best for them in terms of what's going to get me the best performance for the season, what's going to give me the best bang for my buck in order to get it to the top of those guys and fight it out. No matter what your qualifying position is, it's all about how you perform with the car in the race. Are you able to stick it out, get maybe even longer stints out of the car compared to others, but still keep your pace the same, and see how you can do regarding that?
Well, that is actually one thing to talk about, because tonight's race is an 80-minute race. It's a 1 hour, 20-minute race where drivers are going to have to really work in those pit stops and not only fuel up their normal fuel tank, but they've also got the virtual tank as well that they're going to have to contend with. So there's virtual energy plus your actual fuel plus your tires in these GT3 cars that you've got lots and lots to think about as you really have to try and push for it. Now, Rob van der Heever, unfortunately, in the second sector, 1.2 seconds off his best time. I don't think he's going to improve out of this. He did a 208.6 and is sitting in 20th position at the moment. But I don't think he has just enough in the tank to get him across towards the sharp end of the field. So we're going to have to see what he's able to do in the race, like many of these drivers, as we get ready to rock, roll, and rumble for round 2 of our LMU Championship. This time, however, it is all GT3s. It is all some exciting racing. We had COTA last week. This week, Paul Ricard. It is all about technical circuits for the first half of our season. That's looking to challenge the drivers to move forward. Then we've got Le Mans, we've got Lusail International Circuit, we've got Spa-Francorchamps, Fuji, Algarve, and Bahrain that are following suit. So it's definitely going to be an interesting time for the drivers to ensure they stay at the sharp end of the field, and who is going to be able to walk away come the end of the championship. That being said, let's take a look at who will be starting where when the cars start lining up on the grid. So let's get our starting order up. There we go. It's Gerrit Bukes with Johan Blichnout out in second place. Brandon Kruger, Ruan Kleinan, Sean Straden, Martin Jacobs, Kyle Oosthuizen, Estienne Pretorius, Vietia Buerta, Mahaif Musa, along with Chris Collison, Jody Siderman, and we've got Paul Fenter, Grant Leclerc, Neil Greening, Kyle Lake, Jan Gamau, along with Kirsten Pretorius, Arno Kraus, Rob van der Heever, Gerard van der Venter, Kirby Turan, along with the likes of Stanton Augustus and Lucas Jabé. Brandon Holthuizen will be rounding out the pack with Jan VDV as well. So we have got 26 cars starting here on the grid. Unfortunately, a couple of drivers out. Herman Percival, Devon Nell, Tristan Herbs, and Darren Miller out of this race. So, with that being said, Cam, off to the start line, round 2 of the series. Gerrit Bukes, who currently holds on to first place in the championship. Johan Blichnout, who has been a contender and fought for championships in the GT3 class, riding right next to him. Brandon Kruger, former teammate of Johan Blichnout in one category, is now looking to have a go. Do we think this is going to be an interesting run to into the turn 1, or are we going to see a little bit more of a calmer, cool behavior diving for the corners?
Sorry, I'm sorry for that bit of a laugh on, but Steve, it's GT3 racing, it's Paul Ricard. We won't be able to get a calm turn 1. The turn 1 at Paul Ricard is very, very narrow. Yes, you have a lot of runoff, but the penalty system is quite rough here on LMU. As the drivers get ready side by side going into that final corner, I suspect we're going to see a few cars running wide or going off in order to avoid accidents. I'm knocking on the wood in our commentary box, but I believe we are going to see some cars running deep and some running wide.
So it's all down to this. Off to the lights, drivers at the ready. Round 2 of the championship. 80 minutes of racing and pit stops to be expected as we get going at full flight as drivers take their way to the front. It's Gerrit Bukes and Blichnout who are going to fight their way into turn 1. And it is going to be hard braking. It does look like Blichnout has got the advantage here to just carry the momentum through immediately. Brandon Kruger trying to come back at him at a rate of knots. over the curbs and seeing where he can make a move. Sean Stratham also having to defend against Martin Jacobs as a huge gaggle breaks out for 4th place. Immediately, Martin puts his nose forward with that Mercedes, forces Sean Stratham back. Carl Oosthuizen falls back and now looking for the inside line, late on the brakes, a little bit of a bottle up, as well as each of the cars having to have a bit of taste of a Constantina effect. A little bit of a mistake coming in for Vietia Buerta, and we do see one of the logistical nightmares. That is Paul Fenter in the background, going out very, very wide as drivers try to get used to a bit of cold tyres racing here at Paul Ricard, and aim down towards our first chicane, down this monstrously long straight, and it's side by side between Martin Jacobs and Grant Bukers, who continue to brawl it out at the moment. Both drivers looking for their best lunge on one another as they run line astern. Blicknote and Kruger open up their gap to the rest of the field, all looking reasonably clean at the start.
Yeah, some good side-by-side action. I'm quite happy there has been no contact going to turn 1. And though later on we have seen some cars, unfortunately, trading some paint, but again, Rubbing is racing. I'm good to see us. You see again, side-by-side, the Mercedes and Porsche knocking wheels and doors, changing blows as they try to navigate their way through this twisty little intersection right before they go onto the final 2 corners for our long front straight, completing 1 lap here. And now around race pace should be around a 206, maybe even a 207 if you have the car fully loaded with fuel, and also on cold tires will be even worse. But we've mentioned, Stephen, cold tires on a circuit like this, drivers are going to be struggling, as it's going to be difficult for them to really warm up the tires. Normally you take some time doing qualifying, but in a race you do not have that luxury, you don't have that option. You have to immediately go flat out, and also be mindful of when you are going to be braking in order to not damage your race as well as your opponent's race. I see the Porsche and McLaren fighting it out, with the BMW joining in on the rear of that 3-way fight, but it looks like the likes of Esteban Pretorius in the McLaren really struggling in order to use the power underneath his right foot to pull a gap on that Porsche. I mean, the Porsche is a straight line flat 6, so it is going to be struggling. Well, it's going to have a bit more grunt going up corners. The Porsche is phenomenal on the acceleration, but not as strong on its top end speed going down the long straight, as we will see now. The gap already beginning to extend, with the likes of Pretorius pulling having great exit out of that last little corner.
It's going to be a hard chase indeed. We do see Vietia Buerta trying to get past Sean Stratham, look towards the inside. The 2 teammates fighting it out with one another, and also right ahead of them is Carl Oosthuizen and Gerrit Bukers, who are fighting it out for position as well. Bukers, who started out in pole position, unfortunately now down into 4th, and has got Carl Oosthuizen for a bit of company on the back of him. After a little bit of rubbing his racing, it's good to have your teammate backing you up. The question is, are they going to be helping each other out throughout the race? Carl Oosthuizen looks for the inside line, try and get past Bukers. Bukers holds the line, pushes him back, and that allows Sean Stratham and Vietia Buerta to immediately close up as well. They dragging along Jody Suderman and Mahaith Musa. We cannot count out Rowan Kleinans, who's just a little bit off the back, trying to keep an eye on them as well. So as these two continue to fight on, they are now bringing the logistical nightmare racing team a little bit closer to the fight, and at the same time Esteban Pretorius having a bit of contact with Jody out of the final corner. That tipped them both. Mahaith Musa has now got the drive on both drivers, gets the run, clears them. Rowan Kleinans tried his luck as well in the Lexus, but Mahaith Musa won big time here in France, getting ahead of the McLaren and the Porsche. Just a simple bit of contact. Well done to both drivers for keeping it together, but Mahaith Musa is going to be waving like no tomorrow. Didn't have to work too hard on that one, as we see Jody try to look for the inside on Esteban Pretorius, had to back out of it, and Rowan Kleinans bottling up, holding Paul Fenter at bay as well. So we see quite a few of these little skirmishes happening out on circuit. A little bit further back, Chris Collison having a great time with Johan at the moment. The two of them are going and brawling left, right and centre, hoping to keep each other busy for a little bit longer. Right behind them is Gerard and the likes of Brandon Holthazen. Sorry, that's got Gerard VDV and Brandon Holthazen that are together, and young VDV a little bit further back, trying to get a little bit of time. And oh, hang on, big problems coming in for Johan VDV. And that is Van der Venter, who has come to a stop, restarted the car and got himself going. What on earth happened to Johan that he stopped off the racing line? And I wonder, mechanical problem? Maybe the kill switch a little bit too close to steering. Oh, Carl Oosthuizen, as we switch the cameras, going and showing what happens when you lose grip through the fast right-hander, and unfortunately bailing down the grid. Jody also landing up off circuit and losing our time. Kirsten Peters joins up, looks to try and get round. Ooh, a little bit close with the Iron Dames car. Don't want to do that, Jody, as you don't want to scratch that Porsche. It's got a lot of support on the back of it. Grant Leclerc now looks on the inside, can't quite get past, and Kirsten just keeps a very close eye on the rearview mirror to try and hold back Grant Leclerc for just a little bit longer.
Great heart-and-mouth moments here as the fight, but just a quick recap there for the likes of Marth Musa, being patient and waiting for the likes of Pretorius to make a bit of contact between the likes of Pretorius in that little battle, and just sneaking on by, showing again the experience that he has at hand for himself. But now another question is, why did Johan VDV have to pull off in order to know what's going on there? Was it a power cycle? Was there a bit of an issue with the likes of a mechanical issue with the likes of throttles being problematic, or even the steering being a bit of an issue there? It's all questions hanging in the air, as he did not have a great race last week, with some incidents being reported and of course not going in his favor and needing to, I believe, sit out the likes of qualifying. But now he is back rolling the last time we checked, and now trying to fight his way back through again. However, not what he wanted to do, having to pull off the south road to sort out something quickly there in the car before rolling again there. Not what you want to do for your second race here. But as you take a look here, the likes of Grant Leclerc right on the rear end of Kirsten Peters in the Iron Dames Porsche. The Iron Dames, of course, a very strong team in the real world, but also a really lovely livery out here in the virtual world there. But great defending from Kirsten into the first chicane on that long backstretch. Unfortunately, Grant not able to make a move through, and has to sit back again in the slipstream in order to hopefully set up a move on the Iron Dames car in front of him, which is kind of busy being a bit of annoying for him, as he's trying to fight his way up through the rest of the grid.
You can't count out Arno Kraus in the Chevrolet, lurking behind and trying to make up some time. And there is the mistake from Grant Leclerc, nearly into the rear of the Iron Dames car. And now having Arno Kraus on the back of him. Johan Gamal going and chasing as well, trying to close up the distance. So we do have a couple of drivers going through, but we do have our first DNF, and that's Carl Oosthuizen, who is out of the race. Carl Oosthuizen in the Mercedes that got it sideways is officially out of the race.
Now, I was wondering, Stephen, if he had contact with that barrier and had his very own Leclerc moment, but this time in a Mercedes instead of a Ferrari. But unfortunately, it's sad to see a retirement, well, first retirement for tonight's race there. And I'm really hoping that he can get the car sorted, get it back out on the grid, and continue fighting out. Yes, you might be laps down. Yes, it's not how you want your race to go, but honestly, get it back out on grid, continue fighting it, and bring it across the line. It's something that Stephen has preached to me multiple times, as well as any other driver out there on a circuit. Get back in the grid, in the car, take it out onto the grid, and continue it, seeing it to the very end. But it's always sad to see having a car being parked in and pulled into the garage in order for work to be done, or just the team deciding to that is enough. But let's take a look here. Vieter Brits are closing it down on Gerrit Beckers on the run to the first little chicane. Who's going to be best on the brakes? Is he going to try and make a move on it? Is he just goes, pulls out, trying to find a brake marker, hits the brakes, pulls back in, all while the likes of Marth Musta always lurking there in the shadows, waiting for his time to strike and get the position from both of these drivers. But now again, good exit from the likes of Vieter Buerta, slipping right back into the slipstream of the McLaren, pulls out side by side into the fast right-hander. Great move from the likes of Vieter Buerta as he makes a stick. Now next up on the hit list is Marth Musa, putting it there, 2 positions into corners. Not what Gerrit Beckers would have wanted, dropping down from all the way from 4th to 6th in the matter of 2 corners.
Well, we're getting a bit of word coming in from the Sim Stuff Racing side. We've got Brandon Santos saying VDV was sharing his screen on Discord, and that was the reason for him to pull off, let the grid go by, and rejoin the race. So, an interesting way to do it. It's, I won't lie, that's where I go from showing my screen to rather doing radio instead of video at that very point. But, that being said, I do want to point out Rob van der Heever is out of the race as well, so we might have a critical error on him that has pulled him out of the race. Paul Venter going on the inside of Ron Kleinans into the left-hander, hard braking, see if it's going to work out for him, and Paul Venter moves up, gets the BMW across the nose of the Lexus. Paul Venter last season was in a Lexus, so he knows how to push it that little bit more and see what he can do, and how can he fight it out. So we'll have to see what happens.
Some quick little note here. Kyle's car just completely died. He did not want to restart again, from the notes that we got here from David van Veek, saying the car just died and didn't want to start, and he didn't even touch a wall. So now here comes the question: does the series have mechanical failure? And it's not just the series, it is the sim itself. The sims these days are so advanced that it can mimic any mechanical failure. It's literally a little line within the sim itself that unfortunately forces the car to just say, I had enough, we're going to fail right here. Unfortunately, it is what it is. Something that many drivers have experienced, not really what you want to experience, but it is one of those. Sometimes a good cycle can just get the car back up running. You never know what it is, but it is gut-wrenching to see here that the car is out due to it's not wanting to turn the crankshaft within the engine.
Well, the only thing I can think of is when put sideways, maybe a shock load through the motor that it needed for an on-off to get it going again. But also, if you might have gone and strained the engine by any form of imagination, that could go and cause a bit of a problem, as if we do see Jody pulling away from Sean Stratum. But that's the only thing I can think of is, as a driver, you try to push that a little bit more and just didn't quite work out. We're also getting a little bit of note coming in for Rob van der Heever. Unfortunately, he also incurred a mechanical failure. It seems like the battery died, and that was it. Game over. He's out of the race as well with a electrical failure. So a couple of drivers running into some early season problems, but that being said, doesn't mean that they're done for the rest of the season. They can still carry on pushing a little bit more. As we keep an eye on two Porsches, however, Jody Cinnamon and Sean Stratum. Interesting to see these two out on circuit brawling. Two different driving styles. Jody, a little bit more aggressive in and out of the corners, where Sean takes a more of a careful approach, getting into the corner, and then focuses on his charge out of the corner. Unfortunately, he's just not having the room to get that slingshot pass, so he's trying everything he can at the moment. And right ahead of him is our new driver to the field, Carl Lake, into the top 10, trying to push that little bit further. But as the drivers carry on their race, still 1 hour and 6 minutes to go, still a pit stop that is due to come in as well for the drivers to deal with, and that is all going to change how this race works out. I do think we're in for a rather exciting time when we get into the pit stops, because I don't think any of these drivers have been on a fuel-saving mission a little bit further back. However, drivers that have been relaxing on their times is our first and second place, Johan Blifner and Brandon Kruger. They've been a little bit cautious on their drives. Martin Jacobs as well, who's holding on to third place. So the RTA team locking out the top three at the moment. Dieter Buerta up into fourth place, trying to push that a little bit further, and you can be sure that Anushka Buerta will be cheering on from the sidelines, telling him go, 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 go. And it's always exciting when you start to have that bit of fandom coming in as well. Maith Musa into fifth place, Ferret Bucas in sixth, seventh Esteban Pretorius, along with Paul Venter just ahead of Rowan Kleinans at the moment, and Carl Lake holding on to that top 10 as it stands.
Yeah, some really good racing there, especially for our newcomers to the series, the likes of Carl Lake, really able to fight it out with the top 10 there. But I also see in a little note here saying from the likes of Herman Percival saying he got home a bit late and unfortunately missed the start. But I do believe they are still able to get the car rolling and out on circuit, I believe. I'm not 100% sure if it is possible. Herman, you can still go out and drive around there, get the car across the line and still complete this race. I always want to see a car finish a race, no matter what happens, still take it out and across that line. But take a look, we see the likes of Paul Venter and Ruan Kleinans. Paul, a name that we all know quite well for mostly going towards a wall in Forest Elbow on Bathurst, is now in a BMW fighting it out against his old nemesis, the Lexus. He didn't jam with the Lexus, but now he seems to be getting his rhythm back with the likes of the BMW as he sets after the likes of Esteban
Pretorius in the McLaren just up there up the road. And Kerr Bukes is also falling back as well. So we spoke earlier.
Yeah, we spoke earlier regarding the likes of Esteban Pretorius jumping from the Lamborghini all the way to the McLaren. Now, yes, they are both mid-engine cars, both mid-engine cars. However, the size differences between them is quite something of note. The McLaren is very long and quite low to the ground. The driver sits low. It feels like you are almost scraping the track with your overall bottom. Meanwhile, in Lamborghini, it's a bit more compressed, not as long in terms of length, but it is still a tricky car to drive. But it seems like Esteban Pretorius was expecting maybe the same performance he got from the Lamborghini with the likes of the McLaren. The McLaren is a different beast to tame compared to any other car, being it's quite tricky to drive and in its own unique properties, quite fast, but you need to extract everything out of that car to really get it to perform. But take a look at this. Out of the final corner, the likes of Paul Venter getting a great run and hunting down Pretorius, but right behind him, Ruan Kleinans pulls out, looks for a move, no, precise better, pulls back in into the first turn and just continues to follow the likes of Paul Venter as they set after the likes of Esteban Pretorius and hoping to make a move sometime, either keep on pressure or get a jump out of him when it comes to the likes of our pit stops.
We've got a DQ as well for Jody Sederman out of this race. Jody with a disqualification. Unfortunately, he throws him out, and he was actually having a great fight earlier on. Unfortunately, might have just pushed the limits a little too far as Ruan Kleinans gets it all out of shape. Was able to bring the car back, but continues on. So unfortunately, Jody out of this race as a DQ. So 2 DNFs thus far and 1 DQ out of the race. But we are starting to see drivers in the box. The one is Kirsten Peters into the box, getting the pit stop done and dusted, trying to see if you can go maybe that little bit further into the race. Others opting to keep on going. I do want to highlight a driver, however. Brandon Holzhazen at the moment is up 11 positions. Arno Kraus ahead of him would make 12 positions off the start of the race. Behind him, Johan Gummau going and pushing as hard as he can to make up the distance. But Holzhazen at the moment is the only driver to be in double digits for going and getting the most overtakes during the race. And yes, that really tells how the driver wasn't too successful in qualifying, but in race trim is making a bit of an impact and consistency paying off. But Arno Kraus, Brandon and Johan keep each other busy at the moment as Johan dives on the inside.
Bit of a deep run there from the likes of Brandon Holzhausen, allowing the likes of Johan to just sneak through there, Steve. But you did mention there, many of these drivers fighting their way back up through the pack, not really having a good qualifying pace-wise, but are able to extract the most out of the car coming race pace. But now take a look at this. Kirby Tron coming out in the middle of a fight here, completely throwing the Apple car upside down and sideways, having the drivers coming out who are on up to pace and on watch warmer tires having to dive for the more protected line in order to avoid collecting the car coming out of the pits. But here we go, three-way fight. Corvette versus the 2 BMWs. Arno having to hold back the German power that's currently sitting behind him, hoping to just keep on as long as possible and have the straight C. But take a look at the white line that Johan is taking there, almost going off circuit in order to open up turn 1 for himself and carry as much speed as possible, while the likes of Arno Kraus takes a bit more of a narrower line. Here we go. some action into corner, just blocking, placing the car beautifully, is the likes of Kraus, forcing the likes of Jan Gamal to really go and find a way around the American muscle that is this beautiful Chevrolet Corvette?
C,
I don't know. I remember
it's a Chevrolet. It's a Chevrolet ZR6, if I remember correctly, or CR6. But that being said,
I know it's a C8R.
C8R. That's it. But just want to point out, taking the shallower line has been actually taking away some of the advantages. We do see Jan look for the inside line, but take a look over the curbs, quite aggressive, but not getting the drive out of it. By taking those wider lines is running into a problem. And we have got another retirement, and that is from Peters. We saw the Iron Dames Porsche in the pits, and it looks like, unfortunately, a bit of damage to the car and is out of the race as well. So we've got yet another retirement here. And this track is definitely starting to become a race of nutrition versus just a straightforward get it to the end race for the checkered flag. We're starting to see those drivers running into gremlins at the moment for round 2, but these are things that will be worked out as the series goes on. Arno Kraus still keeps up a solid defense, keeping Jan at bay, and Brandon just lurks in the back, waiting for his time to go and move that a little bit further. Question that comes in, we saw the likes of Kirby pulling into the pits early, where other drivers are continuing to go on. Oh, beautiful move from Arno Kraus, veteran move, to try and slow up on the apex to kill the drive of Johan's car, and something that Arno has become synonymous for in the world of iRacing and ACC, and now in LMU, knowing where to put the car. However, Johan is going to just go elbows out and just brute force the Chev out of the way, and that's allowed Brandon to get a bit closer. Johan took a risky move to go a little bit later on the brakes and just put his elbows out, saying, right, Arno, I know that you're going to get on the anchors that little bit more versus myself.
Just getting a bit more out of the likes, for the likes of Johan there, but really great racing there. As I'm just taking a look at everything that's going on here on the side, we know, I can't confirm for a fact, maybe, not going to put a pin in it, with the likes of how JD Cinnamon got his disqualification. Only he didn't rack up any amounts of time penalties or anything. All I could think is he cut the track a bit too much in certain corners, which the game penalized him for, gave him a warning, and unfortunately exceeded that warning, as LMU uses sort of a system that if you accumulate too much points, you do get, unfortunately, disqualified. I do stand under correction for that though, but it is quite sad to see the drivers, unfortunately, being tested by the likes of Paul Ricard, as we see a massive swing out from the likes of Brandon Holzhausen, trying to look for the inside of the Corvette, going into the long sweeping right-hander, again trying to just put his nose in there and hoping to force the Corvette to go a bit wider, as he does now. Speaking of it, as he does, makes him move side by side through the right-hander. The Corvette just able to get a bit better run through that little right-hander. Hard braker on the left, runs deep, hoping to pull the nose back fast enough, and does so, keeping in front of Brandon just barely, and putting a bit of a gap in the process in order to give him, not much of a gap, but enough to just give him some breathing, so he's able to just focus on the track in front and hunting down the BMW in front of him.
Well, at the moment, it's Arno Kraus doing a stellar job to hold the line. Esteban Torres and Paul Fenter, they've been trading blows with one another, but it's still the RTA team, Johan Blufnoot, Brandon Kruger, and Martin Jacobs, that hold on to the top 3, with Vietia Buerta trying to close the distance down between them. Maya Musa in 5th place, Kurt Bukas in 6th. Esteban Torres, Paul Fenter run 7th and 8th, with Ruan Kleinans and Sean Stratham rounding out our top 10. Carl Lake up into 11th position, Grant McClure, followed by Johan Grimau, Arno Kraus, Brandon Holzhausen, Neil Greening, Chris Collison, Gerald VDV, Johan VDV chasing down, Lucas Jabert, Stanton Augustus, Kirby Turan, who saw in the pits a little bit earlier, and a driver that got to the track late, Herman Percival, going out on circuit, and from the start of the race till now is up 4 positions by missing the start.
That's all about just continue circulating and just unlapping yourself. Herman doing some great work there. Also in another McLaren, So Herman going out and really putting in some time there. I do know that him and the likes of Carl Lake are two friends, so they know quite one another, maybe even sitting in the same Discord, working together, or just transferring info between one another, saying what they need to do here. As you take a look at this fight between Esteban Pretorius and Paul Venter, Paul still struggling to get past this McLaren, not able to really get close down the gap anymore, but as the McLaren just has a bit of better long top end speed compared to the BMW, but it seems like the McLaren might be jumping a bit of pace, not as much as the likes of the Lamborghini in front of him. That will be Bierkes, who had a phenomenal qualifying, but now from the start, gone from the front row all the way back to our third row, not really able to retain the pace he set in qualifying, and now need to fight it out for 6th position. But take a look at this. Paul Venter closes right back in on the McLaren into turn 1 in the slipstream, running wide a few times, going all 4 wheels over that white line that's closer to the racing surface, which can be seen as a track extension or even a track cut. So he needs to be cautious in terms of not getting penalized by the stewards and unfortunately receiving a penalty for that. But now again, it looks like the McLaren just set up a bit better for all the narrower corners compared to the BMW, where the BMW prefers to be performing more, well, stronger on the straights as he closes down the gap once again.
On across Brandon Holtes and also into a brawl as well. 2 different approaches into the corners and trying to make up some time. And I'll lean into what you said there. From turn 10 onwards seems to be, well, turn 10 to turn 15 seems to be the BMW strong point. We are getting reports another retirement coming in. Stanton Augustus out of the race. So Stanton Augustus is out of this race as well. And we do see another pit stop coming in. Johan VDV pulling into the pits. So Jan van Venter now trying to get his pit stop underway after sharing a little bit on Discord. Now we'll be getting a pit stop done and dusted to communicate with the drivers, well, the rest of the team, saying, right guys, I now need to get all my cool drink full, I need to get my water bottle filled up, I need to get some snacks, and I need to get back out on track to carry on the fight. But as we keep an eye, Esteban Pretorius, Paul Venter, Arno Kraus, and Brandon Holthazer are the 2 closest fights on circuit at the moment. 7th and 8th and 14th and 15th at the moment are within a second of one another. The rest of the field are a little bit more stretched out in their racing. Now, this is something common with Paul Ricard, but not necessarily a bad thing to be running it, as you're saving that little bit of fuel and tires by not fighting against competition. And something that the drivers got to remember here, as we do see Paul Venter sneaky pass on the inside turn 1. Torres tried to hold him back, unfortunately couldn't get it done. But each of the drivers focusing on their merry way at the moment. We do have a retirement, and unfortunately it's Johan VDV, who we saw pull into the pits, get himself sorted, is out of the race. So what on earth happened to Johan that he is now out of this race and is going to be really a head scratcher for going and moving forward? Unfortunately, 2 rounds not swinging in his way, but it's still an 8-round series. There's 2 rounds down the way, there's 6 to go, and hopefully they can find out what exactly happened to that BMW and what they need to do to fix it.
I mean, it's difficult to really find out what needs to be done with those BMWs there, but every driver, you mentioned, Stephen, the drivers will, along with the teams, will be sitting and developing the car throughout the season. If you have already a season under your belt with the car that you're driving, you will be in luck. You know what makes the car perform its best and which circuit the car will be performing its best there. But it looks like now that Paul Venter again has sorted out this car and is just going up the field, making easy work of the likes of Pretorius and just getting past him in the McLaren there. But Paul really showing he's got the fight to bring it back there and set his sight now ahead on the likes of Bierkes in that Lamborghini. And then right in front of him will be Moaz Musa as he tries to claw his way into that top 5 and maybe even a top 4 if he is able to keep the pace that he currently has. But do not write off the likes of Pretorius. We mentioned it. In the corners, it looks like the BMW is struggling with where the McLaren is thriving. But again, on the straight, the BMW is going to pull away while the Pretorius McLaren is going to be struggling there. As take a look here, not running as wide on corner exit of that final corner. unfortunately having to go and not carrying as much speed with the likes of Paul Fenter. As to take a look of the likes of Jan VDV saying, by mistake gone and pressed the wrong button there. So first it was screen sharing, and now unfortunately having to go and press the wrong button, leading the car to be pulled up on its jacks and pushed into the garage door closing, and saying that is enough for tonight's race. Not what he wanted to have after a very bad start to the season on round 1 of our LMU Championship.
Well, this is it. I mean, going in, having the misclicks is a thing to happen. Herman Percival moving out of the way of Martin Jacobs, who's starting to feel the pressure, looking in the rearview mirror as Vietia Buerta closing down the distance and eyeing out that third place. So for the likes of Vietia Buerta, been biding, waiting his time and looking for the opportunity to move forward through this race. It's going to be a tough time, however, as he's got to close up that distance, and Martin Jacobs will be on the radio to the team saying, right, what do I need to do here to hold my line? Vietia Buerta holds the fastest lap time of the race with a 2:05.7, and the closest to him on that time is actually Brandon Kruger with a 2:05.9. He's running in second place at the moment and trying to get a little bit closer to Jan Bluchnote and seeing where they can go. So an interesting turn of events here with the likes of Vietia Buerta dialing up that pressure a little bit more, seeing that there's an opportunity closing up, and Brandon Kruger, who's actually backing off the likes of Bluchnote, but getting closer to the likes of Jacobs. Are they going to pull each other along? This is what you're able to do when you've got teammates that are out on the circuit. The question is, are you going to take that risk to go and back that little bit up, allow your teammate to catch up, and allow them to be in the slipstream that little bit more to protect them, especially with 47 minutes remaining, and a number of these drivers trying to stretch it out a little bit further on the tanks and see where they come out. Tennis Buerta going out on the grandstands as well, cheering on for everyone. Brandon Holzhazen and Arno Kraus still battle it out amongst one another, as we see a couple of the drivers still looking to push a little bit more. At the moment, 21 cars remain out of the 26 that started this race. Unfortunately, Jan VDV, Stanton Augustus, Kirsten Peters, Jody Cinnamon, Rob van der Heever and Carl Oosthuizen not seeing the end of this race due to various issues. But Arno Kraus got a big problem. Yeah, Brandon, huge look on the inside into turn 1, coming through 2 into 3, just not able to get the drive, but now in behind the gearbox and pushing that Chev a little bit harder, braking early though, as Brandon, a little bit more of a cautious approach at this stage of the game, and windscreen wipers starting to come on. Are we starting to see a little bit of a rainstorm brewing out there, and drivers having to now figure out whether they're going to stay out on slicks or whether they're going to take the option to head in and get some wet weather tires here at Paul Ricard in France. And we do know this European weather can be rather tricky, but we also get to see which of the drivers have been practicing in some very, very harsh conditions, and especially with the rain. This is going to be an interesting drive and an interesting call for teams, because now, do you get in the box now for a wet weather set of tires? Do you hang it out a little bit longer on your slicks to see whether you can go that little bit further?
This is where team strategy is going to make a bit of a difference, Steve, as you mentioned there. I mean, like, take a look again, side by side. Now, this is what we've seen multiple times before. Arno Kraus able to hang it around the outside of that second right-hander, this time not getting the drive he wanted, and unfortunately losing the position to Brandon Holzhausen. Brandon practicing that move multiple times before, many laps, but messes up a bit into that the following left-hander and losing a bit of grip, but still able to keep it there. But here we have the likes of Grant Leclerc and Johan Gamau busy fighting it out, BMW on BMW. But you mentioned there the likes of the weather. Do you go in now, put on your wet weather tires and risk it, maybe not even getting completely wet there out on circuit, or do you go and stay it out on the slicks? Normally, I would, from my point of view, I would say wait it out, until you start seeing a bit of spray coming off of either your car in your rearview mirror or the car in front of you. If you do not see any spray going on, it is still dry enough for you to go and run on slicks. But you have to be very cautious. The curves and lines are going to become extremely slippery, and you do not want to go and risk it and lose your race due to making a call a bit too late there. But take a look. Oh, as I mentioned, that almost a bit of a snap there from the likes of Grant, but caught beautifully, following it, the likes of Johan in front of him through this tight bendy section, as I thought that the car just kind of lost there. But no, it was Johan getting a bit of a snap oversteer moment there, allowing the likes of Grant through. But guess who's right behind him? Another BMW in the form of Brandon Holtzhausen, already dispatching the likes of Arno Kraus, saying, look at the gap already formed between the likes of Arno and Brandon, saying, thank you very much, time to turn on the pressure on you, Johan. Let's see how you perform as I try to make a review. Slips up on the inside, pulls out, decides best, and slots right back in for the first chicane on the long backstretch, hoping to do another repeat of what he did with the likes of Kraus, this time on a similar manufactured car on the long run to the long sweeping right-hander.
Well, Grant got a poor exit, and now immediately Johan comes back at him. Brandon trying to have a look as well, as it's going to be a double whammy through. Grant loses out the drive. Brandon trying to have a look at Johan, but man, oh man, how this race is evolving as the track evolves out there in Paul Ricard. And I've got to say, it is turning into a little bit of a precarious situation out in the back, but all at the front, everyone holding station with their gaps. No one really getting any drive over one another. I'm trying to push a little bit further. I did, however, see Mahiath Musa, interesting tell, is in pit lane. So Mahiath Musa might be yet another retirement out of this race, and will be going and sitting on the sidelines. Project Vapor driver, who was further afar up the field, now out of the running, and we'll be keeping an eye on the rest of the field going through. So definitely some tricky times coming in, and rather sad to see yet another car just not able to get it across the line here at Paul Ricard for round 2 of season 4 of the RaceFace.Pro LMU series, proudly sponsored by EG Evolved. Johan and Brandon keep close to one another. Grant Leclerc and Arno Kraus have now kept each other a little bit in company as well, and I don't see too much of the track conditions changing at the moment from the outside perspective. So it looks like it's just greasy enough that it's slippery out there, but on the other hand, take a look at this. Viertia Buerta, Martin Jacobsen. I was talking about Brandon Kruger backing off to allow Martin a little bit more room to have a slipstream. However, when you got to these conditions and your teammate is not quite keeping the same pace of where he needs to be, you suddenly now have thrown yourself into a little bit of a complicated situation, because there's 1.5 seconds separating the likes of Brandon Kruger of second place, Martin Jacobs and Viertia Buerta, who are all running line astern. And I predict, and this is going to be me putting my foot in my mouth, we're going to see the likes of the RTA team double stacking their pit stop, getting themselves sorted, and it's going to be a Viertia Buerta following them into the pits to ensure that there's no undercut for him to lose out on.
It's going to be difficult, Stephen, but you mentioned again, drivers trying to slack off, one can say, or just lift a bit on the throttle earlier, maybe either to save some fuel, but also to get their teammate and help them out and pull it on. But again, it jeopardizes your race. You might have a bad run, get stuck up, get caught up behind other traffics that you have to lap there, unfortunately messing up your race instead of just driving your own. That's the difficult aspect within teams with the likes of Viertia Buerta now not having any other electrical nightmare car behind him or in front of him in order to help him out, and only have the 2 team members of RTA that are able to help one another. But it looks like he's doing quite well. The BMW doing fantastic on its braking power and able to close that gap quite well, but unfortunately the Mercedes getting the better grunt out of the corner there of the chicane and just able to slingshot his way out there. But look again, look at that gap going down with the likes of Viertia Buerta, just having higher top end speed compared to the likes of the Mercedes and closing down getting almost 2/10 over that little short distance from the chicane to the sweeping layer right-hander there, and just able to follow closely by, as the likes of Martin Jacobs have taken a different line compared to Viete Buerta, having to run a bit wider compared to Viete, who's just able to make it a bit more of a flowing state and closing it a lot more down. But as I say that, the gap already growing again with Martin, just able to get the car a bit more stabilized through that twisty bends and accelerate better out of the corner.
Another little fight going on across Grant Leclerc, duking it out, and Arno, I think, is getting quite annoyed having the BMWs taking up so much real estate in those rearview mirrors. Grant Leclerc pushing harder and harder at the moment, see where he can go, but right behind them, don't count out the Stingers Racing of Chris Collison, who's trying to close up the distance, and you've got Neil Greening as well in the Iron Lynx covered Lamborghini, trying to see where he can get his nose a little bit forward and see where he can close up the gap between them. So we are starting to see drivers making their way forward and others dipping back a little bit. Another little fight happening. 7th and 8th place, Esteban Pretorius and Ruan Kleinans, who are fighting it out, and a bit of a run for Kleinans over the curbing, having a bit of a nightmare of a drive out. Keeps his eyes forward towards Pretorius and see if he can outbrake him. Oh, misses out the first apex, able to save it in the second, but really starting to battle to get onto the anchors a little bit further. And I think drivers now starting to consider the weather conditions going forward. Is it gonna get better? Is it gonna get worse? Are we gonna have enough to move forward, as drivers will need to consider that? Herman Percival will see these two fighting out in his mirrors for 7th and 8th, and whether he's going to lift a little bit later on is going to be the question. However, for Kleinans, he's going to be hoping that he doesn't lift and bottles up Esteban Pretorius to allow a bit of a block pass to happen.
And now it's a difficult position for the likes of Herman Percival. He's a blue flag driver. What does he do? How is he going to maneuver this? But so far, it doesn't have to lift and let them through immediately. He's not getting involved or defending or anything. He's just running his own race. It is the responsibility of the faster cars to pass him safely without disrupting their race. So it's all about, are the two drivers able to catch up to Herman and not force him, but kindly suggest him to just lift and let us through so we can do our own battle? Or is Herman just able to still keep ahead and maybe even assist his fellow McLaren out of circuit by just giving a bit of a slipstream in order to pull away from the likes of Ruan Kleinans in that Lexus RCF, I believe is the brand, RCF, I'm not 100% sure, but it is an older spec model. As I say that, Ruan Kleinans closing right onto the rear wing of that McLaren, but now we've got to see who has the best topping speed. Lexus, known for its straight line speed, quite strong, but it looks like the McLaren is able to say, listen, you might be strong in a straight line, but I am stronger than you, as he holds off the attack from the Lexus.
Oh, a bit of a mistake coming in from Pretorius, trying to keep the car in check. Very, very close in those of Kleinans and Sean Stratham. Now starting to close on the distance of these two as well. So it is turning into a bit of a brawl out in the front between Pretorius, Kleinans, and now Sean Stratham, who's closed up a rate of knots onto them. Remember, they're still all on slick tires. They're on mediums at the moment and just trying to keep themselves going. However, the conditions are starting to play a little less favorable for the slick tires. We're starting to see that happen a little bit more during the course of this race. Drivers not quite having the same drive as they once had at the start. And Ruan Kleinans on the back of Esteban Pretorius, look towards the inside line on the left-hander, late to the brakes, goes for the send, gets it done, stops on the apex, and Sean Stratham comes in as well. Pretorius having to switch up his defense on the exit. Now seeing Sean Stratham there is really, really good on the brakes, is really effective. Kleinans now needs to open up the gap to try and break the toe off Pretorius, but this is a nightmare case for Pretorius. What do you do? Continue the fight forward? Watch backwards? Where do you sit as they start to catch up? Looks to be one of our Mercedes running off very, very wide. That's a 61, minding out of the way. And one of our back markers just being a bit more cautious, not wanting to be too involved, and that is Lucas Joubert. Very well done on his part to just keep a bit of situational awareness in a tough fight indeed. Running out a little bit wide, going to be looked at by the stewards. Oh, and we see the likes of Kleinans running out very, very wide. He dives into pit lane. So Kleinans deciding pit lane is his option. Get the car sorted and see where it goes, and Sean Stratham loses the rear.
Not what Sean Stratham would have wanted, as he was in a very good battle there with the likes of Pretorius, but unfortunately just getting it all wrong there with the car. Almost like it's be crabbing, but unfortunately I think it's just too much wheel spin, making the car a bit unsettled as he got rolling there once again. But I was going to say, Stephen, this is the point where Pretorius might have wanted to just fold in his mirror and turn off the digital rearview mirror that he has on his dash, as he doesn't want to see the back. As we say that, Johan Gabal, the driver's starting to really struggle it out there. Is the wet weather coming into effect with the drivers that are out there on slicks currently, or is it just driver error? Drivers getting a bit tired and making mistakes now, as we see him diving into the pits. This is a different pit lane to what we are normally used to, as we already see Gerard Bierkes there right on the rear wing of Vieter Buerta. Buerta previously fighting it out with the likes of Jacobs and Kruger, but I think that Buerta might have made a mistake there, unfortunately losing out with that battle there, and now again losing out to the likes of Gerard Bierkes, not able to defend it. Bierkes fighting his way back to the second row, not the front row where he started at the beginning of the race. Now I believe it's starting to get a bit tricky for the drivers, as it's becoming a bit misty out there on circuit, meaning that the rain is becoming a bit more, I believe, and they need to box to either change the tires to wets or go back on mediums, as you see the likes of Kleinans, Ryan Kleinans, who we saw earlier having a bit of an off, going into the pits and switching to wets. Carl Lake going out again on wets after doing his mandatory pit stop that is needed, and most of the drivers going on to wets. Only our front top 8 all still needing to go into the pits and change the tires to wets. It's now a case of being foolish and trying to be brave, or being smart and making the most of the conditions and going onto the wet tires. That is the next choice that has to be made, as you see the likes of the 2 RTA cars fighting it out there. Brandon Kruger getting squirrely on the final corner. Not what he wanted to do. I mean, he's now giving slipstream to Martin Jacobs. Martin Jacobs is not needing to fight anyone, meaning he can go and pull off and create a gap, but Brandon Kruger not having the pace underneath him, with the tires screaming for grip on the wet, slippery surface out there.
Well, at the moment, he's just fouling up his teammates, and also Martin Jacobs starting to realize, hold on, I've got to get some clearance here. Looking to go side by side. Brandon Kruger's not going to back down, however. He fights him into the corner and defends like no tomorrow. Both drivers throwing hammer and tongs at one another. From being teammates to work with one another, it's now turned into, hold on, you're costing me time, or I'm not going to lose this position to you. They're brawling it amongst one another and continuing to try and figure out where they can go. An interesting turn of events here for the RTA team, but this is all going to play into the hands of Bierkes and Pretorius, likes of Bierkes, Pretorius, Sean Stratham, Vieter Buerta, Paul Fenter. They can all get a bit of a run. As we see Sean Stratham in the pits, Vieter Buerta leaving pit lane. He was first out of our top 5 to pit. And then we've got Esteban Pretorius a little bit further up ahead, has gotten a great drive out and is now shooting on through. Ron Kleinans as well, moving up. Bierkes, Jacobs, Brandon Kruger and Blutnote all continue on their run. So, for drivers that haven't stopped at the moment, is our top 4 that are yet to get into the pits. And unfortunately, we did see the likes of Johan VDV, who is a DNF, but we do have another VDV, and that is Gerard VDV, who's running in 14th, who has not gone into the pit lane as well. So Gerard Fenter yet to go in the pits as well, joining up with our top 4 that have not gotten into the box. Brandon Kruger and Martin Jacobs continue to roll on that little bit further, and immediately you do see Brandon Kruger opting, hang on, I need to get grip here, let's get it into the box. Martin Jacobs is going to continue his drive out along with Blutnote now into the box. So Blutnote and the likes of Brandon Kruger talking to one another, saying, right, we got to focus on where we need to be and getting some grip to these cars. Martin Jacobs, on the other hand, feels that he's got still enough grip out there and is moving forward. He still feels, hold on, I've got the grip, I can still go. I can get a little bit more room for a victory here, because not only are they fighting out for a team championship, you got to remember it's a driver championship. You're in it for yourself. And if you can be the one that finishes out ahead of the rest of the pack, well, why not take that opportunity? Bucas in the box, Blichnote and Kruger going into the box. Kleinans out of the box with Pretorius, and it is going to be Kruger that's going to be coming out ahead of Blichnote, and Bucas still onto that 4th position at the moment, continuing on the drive with 30 minutes remaining.
I mean, you can clearly say there no team orders are being in effect for any of the RTA drivers. I mean, we have papaya rules. Is this now mango rules, or what, due to the yellow on the car? But both of them, before going to the pits, definitely fighting it out between the likes of Kruger and Jacobs. But take a look at this, Steven. Kruger had a better stop compared to the likes of Blichnote, so meaning Kruger got out in front of Blichnote, even though Blichnote had a 8-second gap. But already see the likes of Neil Greening running wide and costing himself time, allowing the likes of Rhino Utility to snuck up the inside. Oh, almost touching door-to-door racing there, but Grant just able to hold the line better, sets his sights onto the BMW in front of him, which is, I believe,
Gerard
to be a back marker.
No, that
Gerard
is full
VDV now
position.
getting...
That is Gerard
so not a back marker.
that was full position, as we do see Grant Leclerc getting it wrong, and that is allowed, unfortunate, of Neil Greening to get on by. We see Arno Kraus takes the opportunity, so Gerard van der Vente diving into pit lane, and Grant Leclerc once again getting unsettled. Arno Kraus closing up on them with Chris Collison as well. So from a great fight turned into a tricky situation, well, it's all on now. Neil Greening got his 2nd win to try and push a little bit harder to see where he's going to go out in this race. Grant Leclerc a little bit behind, has been making mistakes but been very quick in places. So can he go and pick up the pace to find that grip? However, Arno Kraus is on his tail and will be filling up those mirrors at a rate of knots. Let's quickly take a look at the tyres and see what drivers are on at the moment. And we see all the drivers moving over to wet weather. Martin Jacobs into the box to get his final pit stop out of the way and continue on the race with 27 minutes left to go. It is an outright sprint race for drivers, and let's see who can find the grip at the moment, because the last thing you want to do is be catching those puddles on your way through. So at the moment, Herman Percival up into 20th position, has now overtaken Live Musa in terms of laps, chasing down the likes of Kirby Turan. And here is Arno Kraus having a go and gets past the likes of Grant Leclerc, and immediately Chris Collison from the Singers trying to close up the distance as well and find his opportunity to get a little bit of clearance.
I must say, Steven, from all the cars out there, all the liveries out there, I know that many are driving those that are in the sim. Of all the liveries out there, the ones that I do love the most is, and it's a team that have been producing high quality liveries out there, is the Stingers Racing team. I just love the color, well, all the aspect and the way that the numbers are being projected there. You can say what you want. I love that color combination, as well as the way that the livery is designed. So well done to every your livery design out there. They did a top-notch job out there. But let's take a look again with the battle between Grant Leclerc and Arno Kraus. Round 2, I believe, is almost, or round whatever it is at this point in time, as Grant is trying to fight his way back after making a mistake in the corner they just went through, which allowed the likes of Niels Greening and Arno Kraus to slip through again after he made a good move on the likes of Neil Greening. So now it's all trying to fight a way back, but also defending at the same time from Chris Collison in the Stingers Racing Lamborghini there. So it's going to be difficult there, but again, not really had a great run through this little twist. Now he's getting side by side almost there with the likes of Chris Collison, having to almost defend, looking up the inside, pulls out, trying to see where the brake mark is, maybe an opportunity, nope, decides better, dives back in, decides to sit behind him for the first corner, and go, contact maybe, rear steps, no, there's contact. Chris Collison tried to keep it, avoid contact there for the second part, but Grant Leclerc losing it, rolling forward and clipping the rear end of Chris Collison, sending him spinning at the exit of turn 1 and turn 2. Interesting, turn 2, unfortunately, not what that battle should have turned out to be, but this take a look here. The inter-team battle. Brandon Kruger with the likes of Martin Jacobs. Brandon Kruger pitted early compared to the likes of Brandon Jacobs. Brandon going for Martin going for an overcut compared to the undercut of his teammates in the form of Blichnout and Kruger. So now it's going to be what is happening here. Martin Jacobs going the defensive line. Brandon Kruger almost pushing him along into going defensive line. Martin Jacobs, Brandon Kruger taking normal race line, hoping to go around the outside, holding it there, forcing the likes of Martin Jacobs to keep a tight line, but it looks to the likes of Martin Jacobs winning it out for that little battle, but it is still game on. Going into turn 3 and turn 4, hard into the braking zone for the hard brake and long, slow left-hander, first left-hander, then into another slow right-hander before they go onto the long straight there. This is a team battle that's going on there. Meanwhile, Blichnout is just sitting in the background, hoping and biding his time, waiting for a moment to strike if these two are going to take one another out. We do know no team orders are infected, Steven, so it's all about who is going to get the best hand dealt to them in terms of the tyre, setup, and weather condition.
Well, you've also got two drivers in the front that are very, very aggressive defensive drivers and aggressive attacking drivers. Blichnout at the back is a little bit more relaxed. His driving style has definitely changed over the years, but Kruger has kept to that. Put his nose forward and push as hard as you can. Martin Jacobs, when we first saw him come into the world of LMU, had a very aggressive approach in pushing the cars forward. He will brake that little bit later. He will turn into the corner and force you to slow yourself down. Now you've literally got you've got the likes of a rock and a hard place fighting it out for first position. And both of them know what's on the line here. It's points. It's moving forward. It's also reputation in the team of who's the #1 driver that comes into play. Because even though you're in a team, it's always the pride. You've always got that one person that just stands above all. The question is, who's it gonna be between these two that are fighting it out? And I don't think they've realized right now that Johan Blichnout is sitting in the wings waiting for his opportunity. I do, however, think that Blichnout and Kruger will be talking to one another, just getting some sense of what's happening out here, because it seems the team communication is a little bit of a broken one. We've got Jacobs on one side, who is quite happy to go that little bit further, to challenge the pit strategies and to challenge the drive. However, is not afraid to go elbows out racing against these two. While Blichnout gives that little bit of room to Kruger to make the moves and get it done. As Kruger tries to look around the outside, couldn't quite get it done, switches around, goes offline, little bit murky out there to try and find grip, and immediately Blichnout puts his nose forward saying, listen, you got to keep going here, we're losing time. And in 4th place, trying to close the distance up, is the likes of Bucas. Don't count him out as yet. One mistake from any 3 of these drivers will play into the favor of Gerard Bucas, who currently leads out the championship. That's the one thing you got to keep a very close eye on. You brawl it out with your team. It is all about no team orders, but there's got to be that little bit of a voice in the head saying, okay guys, just remember, you've still got 21 minutes and you're still on the same team. The last thing you want to do, and we've seen it in the past where teammates have collided and have turned the tide of the championship. We've seen it over and over again. Will it happen here at Paul Ricard? Because my oh my, Kruger and Jacobs are definitely running very, very close to one another. And there's a contact a little bit. And immediately it's going to be a quick dive for the likes of Jacobs trying the inside. Blichnout tried his luck as well. And that little bit of an understeer tap was just the warning. It was the warning shot that they could put their nose forward. And oh my heavens, Kruger getting it out of shape immediately as well. And Martin Jacobs trying to go back onto the attack. This is a fight and a half that's brewing. And not to go and round out our fights, we've still got Brandon Holzhausen and Paul Fenter who are running close to one another. 2 logistical nightmare team drivers are going and keeping an eye. But we're keeping a very close look at our top 3 at the moment. They are running line astern and seeing who can get the better of who at the moment. Blithnote waiting it out that little bit more, seeing Jacobs right onto the back of Kruger. Kruger just not having the drive out of the corners. The Lamborghini less than impressed getting on the power too early, and that Mercedes is trying to hunt for every apex and any little bit of gap, whether it's an inch or a mile, he's going to put that nose forward.
Unfortunately, some good racing there with the likes of Jacobs just losing out, but now he has to switch again from leading to defending from his own teammate. As you did mention, it's like these three are on separate sides, with two of them being on the same side, with Jacobs being a bit on the outer side there, needing to do what it is. But I mean, it is Italian versus two Germans. Are the two Germans going to be, manufacturers going to work together? I don't think so. No team orders. Every man for himself at there. And you do see the likes of Blithnote very good on his late braking, keeping it on the inside, and of course just making a great move there and just keeping it out there. But we do see the likes of Jacobs trying to fight it back with the long-nosed Mercedes grunting it out of the corner there in the slipstream. Three-way fight for the lead, all from the same team.
Another little fight coming on as Neil Greening going into the pits. Arno Kraus is out on circuit, and we've got Grant Leclerc and Chris Collison. They fighting it out amongst one another as well. Brandon Holthazen and Paul Fenter both going and clawing at each other at the moment, seeing where they can go. Paul Fenter not wanting to fall down, looks for the inside on Brandon, who's climbed the most positions throughout this race and is one of the drivers that's really gone and shown a bit of colours out here and said, hey, listen, I'm here to fight, I'm here to move forward, and I'm here to make it work. As we go back towards our leaders, still having their brawl at the moment, 18 minutes to go. We've got these three in a fight. We've got Johan that's pulled in the pits for a penalty, a drive-through that needed to be served. Grant Leclerc and Chris Collison are continuing on their fight with one another. So it is heating up at the front end of the field and at the back end of the field. Everyone looking for any advantage at the moment to move forward, any advantage to stay at the top and fight it out for points. However, take a look at the conditions, Cam. 18 minutes to go. It's drying up out there, which means those wet weather tires are now starting to go the opposite way, and they are starting to get a little too warm. That grip is starting to run away. The more aggressive you go, the harder it's going to be to keep up the pace, and we're starting to see Brandon Kruger feeling that on his rears.
Unfortunately, if you do overwork these wet weather tires, they will start losing that grip. I mean, especially in dry conditions, they are not made to work in dry conditions. They're supposed to have cold water flow underneath them and all over the surface in order to cool it down. But now with that hot temperature, along with the brakes, the tires will basically become a paste. It will start melting, becoming very difficult, as we can already see the likes of Blithnote taking it to his old teammate, but they are still teammates now, and the hypercar teammate from LMU side, and trying to stick it around the outside, but this has allowed the likes of Jacobs to get right underneath the diffuser of that BMW as they have a long run into the long sweeping right-hander, and just holding position for now as he is hoping to push the lines of Blithnote to get closer to Kruger as a way of gaining two positions in one go, hoping that the two of them might take a bit of rubbing his racing and unfortunately pushing each other out in that point. But as we already see the likes of Blithnote running deep, Jakob sticking his nose into that second part of the right-hander and keeping them side by side onto the brakes, going left and then forcing on the outside, unfortunately for that part there, losing out the drive for that second part of that little section.
Definitely pushing out of turn 10. But that's going to turn 1. Chris Collison getting the run on Grant Leclerc. Unfortunately, hooks a curb, loses out the drive. Grant gets a little bit more momentum over the Lamborghini as the clouds have swept back over the circuit, and it's going to be for saving grace. That is for certain for these drivers as they take a big breather. Grant Leclerc a little too deep into the corner. How has Chris trying his luck for the inside line? Through the hairpin he goes, and it's going to be Chris. Oh, a bit of a hard hit into the back between the two. And it's not the first time they've come to blows, and it's sure not the last one by the looks of it, as they both continue on their drive. So an exciting race, however, but it is going to be a tricky one, as we do see Grant Leclerc straight lining it over the Lamborghini and is mountains away. It shows a difference in setup. Chris Collison's got definitely a car that's set up for the corners, but just is getting absolutely hurt in a straight line, losing out not just 1 kilometer, but on my clock here, losing out 10 kilometers down the straight over the likes of Grant Leclerc's BMW just on that exit.
Yeah, it looks like not to be set up how it needs to be there. I mean, it looked like the Lamborghini was performing quite well. Unfortunately, now it's just like Grant is pulling away no matter what it does. But unfortunately, also we have to keep in mind, Stephen, Chris Collison might be carrying some damage from the earlier contact at turn 1, where unfortunately where he got clipped on the rear by the likes of Grant Leclerc. So that might be suspension damage or even some bodywork damage. But let's take a look again at our front pack leading, covered or both by half a second as they try and battle their way through, but Blichnoot's able to get a move done on Kruger, taking the lead back again. Now it's either going to be holding position, but that Lamborghini does not look very happy in the hands of Brandon Kruger as the likes of Jacobs is able to get closer again as due to the likes of Brandon Kruger drifting a bit wide in that section. But now again Brandon Kruger pointing his nose, hoping to get the inside on the likes of Blichnoot. These three are fighting it out hammer and tongs. There is no kitty gloves handling the car there. They are absolutely going flat out with one another.
Having a good run, and we will see the likes of Blichnoot trying to stretch open that gap a little bit more like he had a bit early on into this race. Kruger, however, is now setting his sights on the mirror, seeing that he has got that Martin Jacobs Mercedes on his tail. Rowan Kleinund's going to be looking a bit further back as he's got the team trial driver of Arno Kraus all over the back of him, and Kleinund is not wanting to lose out that 11th position at the moment. Grant Leclerc also continues on the fight with Chris Collison as they brawl on. So, as it stands, it is Jan Blichnoot leading out the race with Brandon Kruger, Martin Jacobs, Kerry Bucas, Estienne Pretorius, Sean Straden, Viertier Buerta, Paul Venter, Carl Lake, and Brandon Holzhazen rounding out our top 10 as all bit of a mistake on both sides for Brandon Kruger and Martin, both getting a little bit too wild through the corners, now getting caught out, and it's nose to tail to see how it's going to work out here. Can the Mercedes get the drive on the V10? Can the naturally aspirated V8 of the Mercedes get the run on the V10 of the Lamborghini? It is going to be a drag race down through, and it looks like Martin has just got the legs to keep the run. But Brandon Kruger starting to peer to that left-hand side, waits for his opportunity and sinks back in. Definitely looking, biding his time and seeing he can fool the mirrors at the moment. Arno Kraus and Rowan Kleinunds continue to brawl on that a little bit more. Viertier Buerta in through the pit lane. This is not his first time through pit lane. This is his third time going through the pits. Viertier Buerta going through the pits. Not once, not twice, but 3 times thus far, and unfortunately is falling down through the field. This is a driver that was fighting for the top 5 and now sits barely holding on to the top 10 as Arno Kraus will be right up his gearbox with Rowan Kleinunds, Grant Leclerc, Chris Collison as well. So Viertier Buerta from a race to remember to a race to forget at this point.
Now, unfortunately, going backwards for the likes of the LNR driver, a race, as you mentioned, Steve, a race to remember, to want to forget now, not what you want to do after fighting it out with the top drivers there on in our class. But let's take a look at Chris Collison and Grant Leclerc. Both of them are still fighting it out. Grant just able to hold on a bit more with the likes of Chris, not able to close that gap. And I still believe that he is managing some sort of mechanical damage on that left rear of right rear of the car after being clipped by that little first corner incident of Grant there. So it's going to be something that I hope does not get sorted out within Stewart's office, but it is unfortunately racing there as we do see the results that need to be, as we see the results at the end of the race there. But it looks like our front pack might have settled a bit more with the likes of Blichnoot pulling almost a second gap over his teammates there. And what's astonishing about this, Steve, the 3 brawling it out at the front hasn't allowed the likes of Beerkes to close down that gap. He actually lost a second compared to the likes of Blichnoot, Jacobs, and Kruger, meaning that they are still busy. So they are still busy keeping up their pace with the likes of Beerkes not able to match what they are placing down as times. on the circuit out there, but they are still following nose to tail throughout this long circuit that is the likes of Paul Ricard, where lap time is around a 2:08 to even a 2:06 if you are really pushing the car to its absolute limit.
Oh, Spa-Francorchamps having a snap oversteer in through the corner, was able to save it. Honor Kraus now closing right up to the back of the BMW, looked for the inside, couldn't quite get the pass done. And now Spa-Francorchamps shifting his focus to the review mirrors a little bit more as Arno Kraus is just climbing all over the back of that BMW. And we do see Spa-Francorchamps yet again aiming towards pit lane. He pulls out of it, but Spa-Francorchamps not having a fun time out in the cars. Arno Kraus and Spa-Francorchamps talk about spinning in sympathy. And that is a big one. Brandon Holthazen into the pits. Ron Kleinans is into the pits. Have drivers gone and pushed a bit too far and unfortunately caught out on fuel. But Spa-Francorchamps and Arno Kraus in sympathy, they fell over one another. Arno Kraus getting the worst of it and is down to 13th position, getting overtaken by Chris Collison and Grant Leclerc, who are fighting amongst one another. Talk about a change of run. Spa-Francorchamps able to get into 9th position with the likes of Rowan Kleinans pulling into the pits. But man, oh man, we're starting to see those changes. But let's talk about two drivers that are now going to fight it out. 9 minutes, first place. Only one car can cross the checkered flag first. And Martin Jacobs is looking to be that driver. Blichnote is looking to carry on holding for this first place and looking to move forward. The question is he going to have a problem with a Mercedes hunting down that inside line and moving him offline? Oh my heavens, a big tank slapper from Martin Jacobs, who, well, after gaining that little bit of time, has sufficiently thrown it in the bin.
Unfortunately, it looks like the likes of Brandon Kruger has cooked his tires, the wet weather tires. As you can see, a bit of a dry line forming there on the straight. It looks like Brandon Kruger draining the life out of his tires, and unfortunately not able to fight back to the likes of these front two runners who were able to just maintain their tire life a bit better in order to take the fight out there. But I mean, one little mistake, and we can see the likes of Jacobs just losing any run he had over his teammate and competitor. But now look what's in front of them. It's a mountain of back markers, meaning they have to sort that out before, and it's this current battle that's going on between Collison and Leclerc that needs to be sorted out, with Grant drifting a bit wide and Collison just able to keep it a bit tighter through that second part of the right-hander there. But now it's a three-way fight here with like Buerta, Leclerc and Collison, and right behind them, I believe, no it's not, luckily it's not this battle, but this is another battle as we close from contact to who's able to maintain, with Buerta diving into the pits once again. Stephen, this has gone from really phenomenal racing to absolute heartbreak. It can't be another drive-through due to this fact. It can't be. We didn't see anything popping up on our screen. Did he underfuel? Did the tires not survive? Did he have the wrong tires on? We do not know. Or is he just pulling the gun and saying, listen, the trigger, and saying, I'm going to try and go for dry tires. Let's see what's going on. Because he's dropping now from 9th all the way into 13th, all the way into 14th, and that's probably where he's going to stay, with Niels Greening 40 seconds back when he got into the pits there. But take a look, Stephen, just going to take another driver to take note of as we continue looking at this battle is newcomer Kyle Lake. Missed round 1, came back, changed cars, been new to sim racing, two friends in one shot there with the likes of Percy, of Herman Percival, they're in the background in McLaren, and Kyle Lake driving here. Yes, he's not fighting positions now, but he is showing that consistency can get you up onto the top 10, as he is currently sitting a beautiful 8th position and just continuing circulating. A driver who's testing out sim racing and is enjoying sim racing last time I spoke to him, and is hoping to continue with it. It's a really good performance from him, but Buerta making the call, team pulling the plug, saying, listen, that's enough. We're DNFing the car. We can't, it's a bit too expensive to just continue going out there and damaging the car any further. Pack it up, put it in the trailer and ship it on to the next one. And take a look, between the battle here, back markers getting involved, Blichnote, Jacobs fighting it out, team RTA not giving up just yet, fighting it out. making a great run, making use of the back markers in order to slingshot past the leader or old leader of the race, Blichnout. Blichnout not giving up, shooting down the inside, being placed out on the outside, forcing Jacobs to be on the outside. Trading positions, left, right, bit of contact, losing drive, but he's got a better line. Who's going to be nice? Now Blichnout's got a better line for the next part of the session. This is going to be close, ladies and gentlemen. This, both myself and Stephen having hands in air, side-by-side battle. Blichnout getting the line now for the next corner. This is going to be heartbreaking if this goes bad. Looking for the switchback, not being able to make it. Blichnout keeping it there. Martin Jacob sticking his nose underneath that rear wing of the BMW, now pulling a bit back as we see some of the spray coming up again. I wonder if it's becoming a bit more rainy out there, Steve, but these two are not making it easy, going for a bit of a wider line out of the last corner. Better run out, who's going to be the best, cutting, forcing his teammate over to the pit wall almost as he's trying to squeeze him a bit. Better line from the likes of Jacobs. Who's going to be best on the brakes into turn one? It's just a bit of spray coming in the front. Best on the brakes. Who's going to be the bravest? Into turn one. It's side by side. Blichnout holding it a bit better, but being placed on the marbles for turn two, and Jacobs holding it there. Some proper side by side racing.
And they got Honor Kraus up the road from them as well. That's going to be a back marker. We saw the likes of Lucas Joubert, unfortunately, getting off into the distance, outbraking himself, trying to avoid getting involved in this fight. However, a bit of a moment coming in with the likes of Blichnout leaning on the nose of Martin Jacobs, and that's brought Kruger back into it. It is absolutely pouring down for the last 3 minutes, and we have got a fight. Kyle Lake and Chris Collison on the back of one another, trying to push as well. So we have got fights right through the field, everyone going, and our two fights that are out on circuit are literally on the same piece of road right now. They are both going and fighting out down towards the wire. This is going to be a make or break situation. Honor Kraus getting a good drive out of the corner, does lean to the left hand side to allow the drivers to go through, not wanting to interfere too much at the moment, but he will be kicking up a horrendous spray. So it's all about clearing him as quick as you can. And unfortunately for Martin Jacobs, he was a little bit too slow to clear. Brandon Kruger took the opportunity and immediately took that dive and is right up against that rear diffuser. Carl Lake and Grant Leclerc fighting out. Chris Collison has managed to clear them, as we do see Herman Percival jumping out the way. He's saying, good luck, Kyle, this is your fight now. Grant all over the back of him. Honor Kraus is caught up to them as well, and our leaders have caught up to the fight. It is going all over the show, and caught in the middle is Kobe, who is just looking ahead of him, looking behind him, and just waiting for the moment where these cars come barreling through, because it's not going to be a nice move out the way. It is going to be a push, a shove, and a whoa, big mistake from Kobe. That is one way to get away from the grid. Unfortunately, not the way that you would like to. A little too early on the power, and too wet out there has caused a horrendous mistake on his part and losing out the drive. But we have got 3 fights ahead with Chris Collison, Carl Lake, and Grant Leclerc have the leaders on their tail. They do not have to move out the way. They can hold their line. They just have to be predictable and not fight the leaders. However, you have now got a fight where Grant Leclerc has got the corner wrong.
Oh.
So is Carl Lake. He's going to come rejoining into the fight. It has turned into a mess. It is touching. It is all over the show. Martin Jacobs, Blichnout gets clawed by Leclerc. Jacobs is thrown off the circuit, trying to avoid. He swings around the outside. Grant Leclerc immediately on the back of him. Kruger coming back at it. Kyle trying to return for the fight. He's got Honor Kraus on him. What on earth is going on here? This has turned into a monstrous flight. Blichnout flashing his lights, saying, come on, you got to mind out the way. Kruger's going to box him in for the corner and make life even more miserable that he can't get round. He's now suddenly got spray on both ends. Grant Leclerc, minds out of the way. Kruger gets right on the back. Chris Collison is the next one to be the cork in the bottle, fouling up Kruger, allowing Blichnout to get on the back of him. But Chris Collison getting a little bit of a poor drive. Now suddenly has the likes of Grant Leclerc, Carl Lake, and Honor Kraus back onto him as well. It is all unfolded into madness. We have now gone and said Beetlejuice twice.
Oh, do we dare say it the third time, Stephen? It is going to be the final lap the next time they cross the line, meaning that all unfolded on the penultimate lap, making it even more heartbreaking. But take a look. Martin Jacobs able to pull a bit of a gap, not enough, because here comes Blickman and Kruger fighting back in, but Chris Collison and Grant Leclerc, this fight is not over yet. And right behind them, we've got the likes of newcomer Carl Lake, who lost 2 positions in that little exchange, and also behind them is the likes of Arno Cross. 4-way fight, all for 8th position. Carl Lake not throwing in the hat yet, hoping to get a top 8 or top 10 position finish for his first race out in the RaceFace LMU Season 4 Championship. But take a look again, our top 3 fighting it out again. Jacobs pulling a 1.1 second gap already and pulling it even, dropping a bit more now. But Bruchnout and Kruger, 2 teammates fighting it out. Kruger trying to find for a bit of open view.
That's checkered.
That's checkered. Ah.
That's checkered. That is checkered, folks. And it is Martin Jacobs that got the victory over Brandon Kruger. Blicknote going and flashing his lights here. Thank you. Oh, it looks like a bit of a mistake coming in the background. Oh, man. That would be Johan that got all out of shape, rejoining onto the circuit ahead of Esteban Pretorius, but got it right at the line. It was wet out there, folks, of note, and the drivers now all across. Martin Jacobs, Brandon Kruger, Johan Blicknote round out to your top 3. Karapukas, Esteban Pretorius, Sean Strait and Paul Fenter, Chris Collison, Grant Leclerc, Carl Lake gets his top 10 and taking the final spot of that top 10. On across, Brandon Holthuizen, Jan Grimmel, along with Neil Greening, Gerard VDV, Lucas Joubert, Kobe, and Herman Percival, rounding out our drivers, finishing up the race. Unfortunately, a lot of DNF, starting off with Viertel Buerta, Rowan Kleinans, Mike Musa, Jan VDV, Stanton Augustus, Christian Peters, Jody Sediment, Rob Vinnegever, Carl Oosthuizen, unfortunately out of this race and have not been having a good time. With that being said, Cam, catching our breath here. What a race indeed. What a drive had by all, and what a moment out there on circuit where you think you know what's going to happen and it all turns on its head right at the last minute. It's all about consistency, but sometimes it turns into a race of nutrition, and the drivers having to really think outside the box here at Paul Ricard for round 2 of the LMU Championship Season 4 here at RaceFace.Pro, proudly sponsored by EG Evolved.
Yeah, absolutely, Stephen. We had some great racing out there tonight and some hard-mouth moments, even heartbreaking moments for many of us, but really, really proud moments, we can say, for many of our drivers out there, those that are new and got some great results out there, but also to the likes of those that might have missed the start of the race, but came back and still finished. And that, of course, is Herman Percival. Yes, you might have missed the first 6 laps, but guess what? You still got the car out on the circuit, and you still got it across the line. So I tip my virtual hat towards you for continuing the race today, and then congrats to all our drivers out there who really, really fought it as hard as they possibly can all the way to the very, very end. It gave us some good entertainment when it came to the back markers and some very, very, very edge of seat moments. So well done to everyone out there.
Yeah, definitely some hard moments indeed, some great ones as well. And the RTA team managing to lock out the top 3 positions. I do think there might be a little discussion in the pits of who managed to bump who at that point. But with that being said, it's not over for the week, Cam, because we're moving on to round 2 of our EG Evolve RaceFace.Pro GT3 Championship in ACC for the 25th season. We're going to be heading out to the Nürburgring to go and fight it out, and that is going to be at 8 o'clock tomorrow night. Both our Pro and Pro-Am will be out, and we may actually have our AMs being broadcasted as well. So if you are interested, keep an eye on the channel, hit the subscribe button along with the bell notification icon, and we look forward to having you out on the track with us. Sign-ups for the iRacing will be opening soon as well, so it doesn't matter what sim you enjoy. iRacing, LMU, ACC, we've got it here at RaceFace.Pro, and you get to be a part of all the action indeed. But with that being said, Cam, we have come to the end. We have reached the end of the rope here in France. We fly over to Germany tomorrow for some great racing. Any last thoughts from your side?
Well, Steve, you might be flying over. I will be catching the Eurostar as it's just across the border for us currently. So really eager to see the racing there for tomorrow and some tonight, as we've got some good racing out there on circuit. So I'm really looking forward to see what we have there in the future. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope to see you all tomorrow in the ACC broadcast there. As Stephen has mentioned, we might be having the gold and silver race also broadcasted if things pan out there as we hope. But really, thank you again from our side for joining us tonight on this round 2 for season 4 of LMU RaceFace.Pro Championship. And again, keep an eye on all social media there, or even on our Discord for the start of our iRacing Championship, which will be kicking off the 3rd of March for the round 1, so to be taking place there. So keep an eye on there on our SimGrid page also for any announcements coming up there and for when registrations open up for the championship. From my side, I want to say thank you all for joining us, and handing it over to the man behind the mic, Stephen Koenig.
Man, I would say I'm more of a boy, but okay, we'll go with that one. But ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's been absolutely wonderful. Big thank you to our sponsor, EG Evolve, for being with us, and all our admin behind the scenes working frantically to get the series up and going. A big thank you to all the teams and drivers for coming out and racing, putting on a phenomenal show. More importantly, I think the most important is thank you to you absolute legends, you race fans, you virtual grandstand that keeps us going time after time after time, that gets us back into the seat, to get us back out and going. And we look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow night with the ACC. And like always, folks, we'd like to say a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow for some ACC action for our EG Evolve GT3 Championship Season 25, Round 2. And we look forward to seeing you out in the Discord. Farewell.